Hi, I'm Annalisa,
I'm Maggie.
And I'm Nicole.
and this is Unconditional, the podcast. Hi, welcome to the latest podcast for Unconditional. I think everybody is feeling a little low today, feeling a lot low today, because yesterday we witnessed another national tragedy. And I actually worked all day yesterday. I had clients all day long. And when I got home, my 8-year-old kiddo was already asleep. And I'm gonna get teary-eyed just saying this. I went to her room and I just cried, just watched her sleep and I cried. And I thought long and hard about what I wanted to say to her, if anything. And I decided to hold off on talking to her about the school shooting that happened yesterday. But she knows about school shootings because she does the Alice drills. And she's a little human in our modern culture. And so unfortunately, she's already learned a little bit about it. So I sent her to school today and I made an appointment with my therapist, which I will be doing after our podcast recording today. So I'm doing my best to take care of myself so that I can take care of my kiddo and so that I can take care of my clients. And all of that has been really hard.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, especially, I feel like we're on such a roller coaster of events within the past, 3 years or so with the pandemic and all of the tragedies that have occurred thus far. But when it comes to this, when it's like innocent young kids in a school, where they usually most of them love to go, and for a lot of them is a safe haven for them to go, um, especially if home life is not, as great as they'd like it to be. And I am just like baffled. I'm trying to stay off of social media because it is just flooded with everybody. I have not seen one off topic post. And it's again, I'm just like speechless because there has to be something that can be done. There is something that can be done. And, a lot of these senators just continue to turn a blind eye, and it's devastating. And, I'm a very glass half full type of person. I'm always looking forward to the light at the end of the tunnel, but this is rough. And it's having you can already see the effect that it's having, both within the mental health community and outside of it as well.
I feel heavy. I think that's the only way I can really describe it. I think, in a previous life, I worked in schools. I've worked in, middle school and elementary school age level, and thinking about part of the curriculum being active shooter drills along with, natural disaster drills, and how many kids are learning about these things so young because of the world that we live in. And then there's, the feelings of, knowing that my nieces and nephews are, going to school and could be potentially at risk, people that I love and care about. And then I think of my clients and, I work with adolescents and adults, and both, where yesterday and today have, had messages of, trying to figure out how to cope with such a big thing, right? Like, I mean, in the last couple of weeks, it hasn't just been schools. It's been, there's, and even just thinking of the past, what, like so many years of, places of worship, supermarkets, all sorts of places that are just parts of people's lives, everyday, things, and they're no longer safe. And so it's hard as a human being to hear this news. And then there's also this part of being, a counselor, and simultaneously balancing how it's affecting, my life, my mental health, my, focus, my energy, and then also being there for my clients who are looking for that guidance on how to take care of themselves and their families and their friends, and during these kinds of times. And, it sucks to even have to make a podcast about this anymore. I mean, it's been so many years, and it feels just like almost inauthentic talking about it over and over and over and over again. And so there's definitely not just the sadness and that low energy, but just like this frustration and anger towards this even being a topic. It's infuriating, to be quite honest. So it's definitely a lot to take in. And you're right with the social media piece. It's all over the place. And so I think, like, what, 12, 20 years ago, when things like this were happening, we didn't really have as easy access to hearing other people's thoughts and seeing all of the debates online or the newscasts or, what have you. And so that also becomes draining, and it's harder to navigate.
Yeah, it makes it hard to be a human. It makes it hard to like live your life to the fullest because we have to be afraid all the time. I would be lying if I said that wasn't something that crossed my mind when I go to a concert or when I'm in an airport or, just sort, in big crowds like that. Um, and that's a red flag. It's scary because that's a hint at that it's becoming normal and that like I'm on the lookout for things like that. And um, it's really, really sad. And to see the changes that have been made in other countries and how quickly those changes have been implemented, in a lot of places. I think I read something, in the UK, they experienced a large shooting, and within a few days, they had gun control laws, and I don't think they've had another one since it occurred. Um, and it's just like, why at this point are we not going to even try? Why aren't we going to take the risk of trying to implement these laws? Like, why is it that like people's lives are not as important? I just when it's and especially when it's little innocent children going to school just trying to live their life safely. Like, I never had to worry about that stuff when I was young, like when I was a young kid in school. Like Nicole said, it was more about earthquakes and tornadoes, and now it's a really, really scary thought. And I remember as I started entering more into junior high and high school, I was more afraid of school shootings, and because the more education we have on it. But eh, it's it's a double-edged sword, right? It's good to, like we were talking even before we started recording, that it's good to be informed, but it's also good to step away from topics like this. It's not a selfish act to do so, especially when things get really, really heavy. It's good to, break off from it for a moment, but to do so respectfully, I suppose.
Maggie, what you shared was so relatable. Like me and Nicole and everyone else who is going to listen to this, right, can relate to the things you're thinking and feeling. And you said something really important, which is we said a lot of important things, but two things stood out to me. One, that we're not safe anywhere we go, and two, that you're constantly looking around and thinking about how to keep yourself safe. And it's really important to keep in mind that even though that feels like reality right now, that's actually your trauma talking, right? So trauma is not necessarily something that has happened to you personally. It can also be a thing you witness. And the trauma or the traumatic events, the violence that we see on television and on the news, our limbic system, right? The amygdala, the part of our brain that is responsible for spotting danger and telling us when to fight, or fight, you know what I'm trying to say, fight or flee, and the others, that part of the brain, it can't tell the difference between something that's happening on TV to someone 3,000 miles away versus our neighbor, right in front of us. It all still feels like trauma. And so you're still going to have that response. And so what you're doing when you go into these places and you're thinking, how do I stay safe? Where's the exit? What are the chances someone's going to be here with a gun? That's called hypervigilance, right? Probably you are safe. Probably when you go to your local grocery store or your local school, you are going to be okay. And so part of what we have to do is talk about how we're feeling, right? Talk about what's happening, and then figure out a way to bring ourselves back to equilibrium after we've let ourselves express those feelings, right? So that you don't live every day of your life responding to trauma.
Yeah, there's a huge part of like that balance to acknowledge how you're feeling, have an acceptance for how you're feeling, but also the ability to move forward, right? And because there's a lot of room to get stuck in a lot of these feelings and thoughts, and especially when something has just happened, it's a collective spiral into thinking about a lot of these topics. And it's okay to acknowledge that it happened, right? But like that balance of staying informed and taking care of yourself has to be there. We don't want to, be ignorant to the fact that things are happening, but we also want to acknowledge, like Lisa was saying, like right now, even though there is that hypervigilance that might be going on in my head, I know right now I am safe. Because that state of hypervigilance takes so much energy out of you, right? If you're staying in that heightened sense of awareness day in, day out, it's going to start to wear on you, not only mentally, but physically. And so making sure that balance is there, again, that acknowledgement, that acceptance, and that ability to move forward, it is very important.
Feeling anxious, stressed, or overwhelmed? Join local Montgomery County author and animal-assisted therapist Annalisa Smithson for a 21-day journey of compassionate, playful self-discovery. Readers will relish this timely, easy-to-digest pilgrimage of self-love, which Smithson offers through 21 snack-sized chapters that can be easily digested before breakfast. Unconditional: Learning to Love Your Authentic Self is available now on Amazon in ebook, paperback, and hardback versions. Get your copy today. Go to AnnalisaSmithson.com for more information, or find Unconditional on Amazon.
So the question that I keep hearing from my clients today is like, what do we do, right? This sort of powerless feeling, right? This sort of grasping for like someone, give me an answer, someone help. And it's so painful as a therapist to have to acknowledge that, you know, holding space for your feelings, for each other's feelings, keeping yourself and your family grounded and safe, that has to be enough, right? But that sucks. And anytime it's a systemic problem, right? Folks come to mental health counseling to deal with the aftermath of a systemic hurt. It's just so painful because it's like we can't therapize ourselves out of the damage that racism and sexism and violence does, right? So that's also a fine line. So like acknowledging that like we're each one individual human, and you know, loving ourselves and loving each other, that has to be enough. And also, I'm going to go ahead and be who I really am, which is an activist and an intellectual, and share with you all that, like, yeah, I do get fired up and want to make a change. And I do, you know, get really involved in my local politics, and I vote and I campaign, and, you know, I do those things because that does give me a sense of power and control. Like, okay, maybe I can influence a few people to, you know, want to think a little bit more critically about the issues we have going on and try to exercise the power that we do have. So I want to share something with you. This is, it's not a therapy magazine at all. It's Inc. magazine, which is about business. And this person, Vicky Sai, she's the founder of a skincare brand called Tatcha. So she was talking about going to Japan and meditating with a Zen monk who provided her some advice. So the person's name is Torio Ito. Hopefully I pronounced it correctly. So she had shared with him that she was struggling to keep up with the change of pace at her business. And he said, think of a tree. The most important part of a tree is its roots. The deeper the roots, the higher the tree can grow safely. The roots keep the tree stable while the branches are flexible, allowing the tree to withstand gale force winds. Look at a tree whenever you feel overwhelmed. Think of your values as the roots, the things that keep you grounded, and then be flexible about everything else. So my values are very much around, well, mental health, self-care, family, we know that, but also activism. Like that really is important to me. And so, yeah, I get fired up when I see news like this, and I'm like, you know what? Once I've given myself a chance to sit with my feelings, make sure Riv is okay, you know, talk to my therapist so that I can be real and authentic about how I'm actually feeling, which is fearful and sad. Also, there's the anger, and I'm going to let the anger motivate me to be even more of an activist. That fits my values, and that's what I feel like I can do next. So I just wanted to share that with all of you.
There's a piece of, so there's a couple of things that I thought about. One, I love the visualization of that, you know, tree and the flexibility, because, you know, when you see a tree in those winds, like you do see like that movement, but at the root of it all, for the most part, the tree stands tall, right? If the values or those roots aren't well planted, or, you know, really like held with conviction, then the tree falls. And so I like that visualization. There's another thing that you had mentioned too, like that conflicting feeling sometimes, right? Of, you know, we can be a ton of different emotions at once. And I think in times such as the one that we're in right now, and the one that we continue to be in, and also even just in like our own little bubbles in the universe of a tragedy such as a loss, or, you know, something major that's caused intense emotion, that any other conflicting feeling feels like there's like a tug of war, right? Okay, I'm sad, but then I'm also kind of excited about this thing that's happening a couple of days from now, but I can't be excited. I have to be sad, right? And there's like this feeling. And a lot of times, you know, I say they're like but statements, right? You know, I'm excited, but I'm also upset. And that's the one that I have to focus on. And if I start to kind of gravitate towards the one, then it starts to feel inauthentic, or it starts to feel really uncomfortable, or you feel guilty, or what have you, and then it kind of pulls you back in. And there's this awesome, dialectic behavioral therapy, or DBT, concept of the power of and. It's okay to feel both, right? Hold both. And in those statements where you might have a but in there, or an or, right? I have to be angry or happy. I have to feel sad, but I'm also excited. Putting and in the middle can start to help with that feeling of, okay, there's a tension between these two, and it's okay that they're there. And it's okay that, you're on that continuum of the two different emotions, right? And like the idea that Lisa was saying of, sometimes the love of others and, yourself and taking care of yourself, that has to be enough in a lot of these situations. And part of that is honoring all of the things that are going on in your mind during this time, right? Because that can be stressful too. And you can start, getting very judgmental about yourself. And, part of self-care is not doing that. I think we've mentioned that here before. But to remind you, it's okay to feel both. And just doing that tiny little, just retraining, reframe in counseling speak of, if you notice a lot of the statements that are going on in your head are leaning towards a but or an or, right? Just replacing that statement with an and seeing what that does. It might feel like a little shift. It might not be like the most mind-blowing thing in the world, but it's a little something that reminds you that it's okay to have both of those sides coexisting, because most of the time it is going to coexist. And that change is also going to be inevitable, that other emotions are going to take this place.
So I learned about that concept through my improv therapy group training. And in improv, they talk about the yes and, right? In order to have a really good, really funny sketch, you have to be willing to yes and your partner. If you no but them, you're going to end the scene and it's not going to be funny and it's not going to be fun, right? But if you, whatever they say, if you follow it with a yes and, like, we have to take the dog to the vet. Yes, and we have to stop by the astronaut store for some ice cream. I don't know why I said that, but I'm not very good at improv therapy, I guess. So the yes and, I thought that was so incredibly powerful, and I put it on my vision board. Like, I have a big yellow yes in block letters and then an ampersand. And I look at that to like help me remember, like, especially like when there's, whether it's inner conflict or conflict with another person, like, just remember to yes and the situation, and we're going to get to a good, fun, fulfilling solution.
Yeah, there's the idea that that change is going to either allow you to move forward, it's going to elicit change, or you're going to have to sit in the discomfort.
So my therapist has a second degree in outdoor recreation, which I think is super cool. And I don't know how that happened, how that came together. But she told me that when she was studying her outdoor recreation degree, one of her classes, she was assigned to pick a tree. And did I share this already in a different episode? Okay. She was told to pick a tree and make that like her pet tree for the semester. So every day or every couple of days, she would go and visit this tree. And for outdoor rec students, this is really cool, right? Because you're getting to see how it changes throughout that like 5-month period. You're getting to see the different insect life and bird life and whatever else, the moss, the lichen. So I get that, that's cool. But for the counselor in the room, the one counselor is probably in the entire program, for her, it was this really Zen experience where she was able to just go and she said it was a willow tree, and she thought of grandmother willow from Pocahontas. And so she called it, I forget the name, but like an older name, like Ethel or something. So she would go visit Ethel and have like a few minutes of just peace and quiet with this sturdy tree that had been there for dozens of years and was going to be there for many, many more after she spent her 5 months with the tree as a pet. So my invitation to our listeners today is to give yourself permission, along with whatever feelings are going on, whatever thoughts are going through your mind, just give yourself permission to go find a tree and be at peace for a couple of minutes. Okay, well, I guess that's a wrap for today. Thank you so much for listening. See you again in a couple of weeks.
Bye.